Good evening. The Municipality of Anchorage Platting Board will now come to order. It's November 1st, 6:30 p.m. The Platting Board meets each month on the first and third Wednesday, except holidays, as regular meetings. If the Platting Board fails to complete its agenda at the regular meeting, the Board will carry over to the remainder of the agenda to the following meeting. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at the meeting is, after staff's presentation is complete on a public hearing item, I will ask for public testimony on that issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rule of Procedure. Petitioners and their representatives receive 10 minutes. They may reserve part of their time for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, PTAs, community councils are given 5 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Board. You may only testify once on an issue unless we question you further. And may we have roll call?
Clayton Walker.
Present.
Don Porter.
Present.
Kevin Cross.
Present.
Mark Seward.
Present.
Valerie Ritz.
Present.
Jenna Welton. Present. Becky Lipson.
Present.
Dan Young and Christina Enix have been excused. Thank you.
Welcome, Becky. This is, I guess, your first meeting, and welcome to the Platting Board.
Thank you.
First item of business will be action summaries. We have action summaries dated from October 4th, 2017. May I have a motion to approve the action summary? Kevin Cross moves and Valerie Ritz seconds. Is there any opposition to the action summary? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next, we'll turn our attention to the minutes from Wednesday, October 4th, 2017. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Kevin Cross moves. Can you hit the button again? It fell off somehow. There you go. Thanks. Don Porter seconds the motion. Are there any changes or amendments that need to be made to the minutes? Seeing none, is there any opposition to the motion? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. Next, we'll take up disclosures. Are there any disclosures to the matters public hearing? Becky Lipson.
Thank you. I am disclosing that I abstained from voting on the action summaries and minutes as I was not yet seated. I would also like to disclose that the firm I work for, Ashburn and Mason, represents in case S12371, petitioner's representative, KPB Architects, is a client of the firm, not with respect to land matters. I have no knowledge or involvement with this matter. I have no financial interest and can remain impartial. With regard to the second case presented, both Eklutna and S4 Group are also clients of the firm. Again, I have no knowledge or involvement with this particular matter and can remain impartial with no financial involvement.
Thank you. May I have a motion to direct Becky Lipson to participate in case S12371 and case S12372? Don Porter moves and Valerie Ritz seconds.
Yes, I move that we direct Ms. Lipson to participate in the case as she has noted that she has no financial or other knowledge of the cases other than that they work for the firm that she works for.
Thank you. Are there any other findings that the board would like to offer? Seeing none, is there any opposition to directing Becky Lipson to participate? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. Becky Lipson, you are directed to participate in cases S12371 and S12372. Are there any other disclosures? Seeing no other disclosures, we'll turn to the informational items. We have abbreviated plat action summaries for October 2nd and October 16, 2017. And with that, we'll now move to the public hearing items, and may we have staff's presentation on case S12371, Spinardia subdivision lots 1 through 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to subdivide 8 lots into 4 lots with variances from AMC 21.08.040.A2 and AMC 21.08.050.D1C. And that's for dedication and vacation of a 20-foot alley between West 35th Avenue and West 36th Avenue along the east property line. So this request is being made to consolidate the lots and align each building on its own single lot. This will allow Cook Inlet Housing Authority to create a campus with consolidated access, landscaping, shared parking, pedestrian walkways, and shared open space. And it also brings it a little more into conformity with Title 21 standards. The petition site is located just north of West 36th Avenue, south of West 34th, and west of Spenard Road in Anchorage. The property is zoned B3, and the proposed lots meet the minimum lot size and width required by the zoning district. There were no objections by the reviewing agencies to the vacation of the 20-foot right-of-way alley and to the variance for dedication. So the unnamed alley appears to be developed as an asphalt surface parking lot, whereas internal to that subdivision. The petitioners requested to vacate that, and then they're going to rededicate a 26-foot public use easement in a new location just slightly to the east of that. So that's going to be along the west side of Lot 2. The petitioner will be required to construct a minimum 20-foot wide paved alley to mass standards. Staff is requesting a 5-foot development setback easement and 5 feet of right-of-way to be dedicated along the Spenard Road. This is because the OSH&P classifies Spenard Road as a Class 2 minor arterial. That's 80 feet in width. So this setback and dedication will meet the requirements of the Class 2 minor arterial. Staff is also requesting a 5 feet of right-of-way to be dedicated along West 36, and then that's that 26-foot public use easement internal to the properties there. So Anchorage Water and Wastewater stated there's no objection to the vacation. However, they do have a sanitary sewer main that they'd like protected by a 30-foot wide easement. The municipal traffic engineer stated there is no objection to the vacation of the right-of-way, and that the access through this common access easement will address all the circulation, parking issues that are associated with lots 3 and 4. This kind of goes back to the whole purpose of this plat. They're cleaning it up and for their whole master plan, because there is some constraints associated with future development plans. So generally, the reviewing agencies had either no comment or no objection to these vacation requests. Therefore, staff believes the right-of-way is in excess of municipal need, and it recommends approval of this vacation. On to the variance request. So the variance is requested from dedication streets, and that's to allow the petitioner to dedicate 5 feet instead of 15 feet along the south boundary of West 35th Avenue. So we address that. All 4 standards appear to be met. The subdivision was created in 1940 with only a 30-foot dedication. Obtaining a 60-foot dedication along West 35th appears unlikely. There's also an existing building within the subdivision that prohibits this full dedication. So that's why we're asking for dedication of 5 feet of right-of-way, which is applicable for the B3 zoning setback to the building of 5 feet. Some of the other standards, the subdivision lots shown on the preliminary plat will provide legal and physical access to all lots within the proposed subdivision, and undue hardship would result from the petitioner for strict compliance with the subdivision regulations. We cannot ask the property owner to dedicate 15 feet along that south half of 35th Avenue, as this would create a zoning violation with the structures encroaching into the dedicated right-of-way. With that being said, Planning Department recommends approval of the request for variance. That's for the dedication of streets, and to allow the petitioner to dedicate 5 feet instead of 15 feet. This is basically, we're recommending approval of the request for the variance, the request for vacation, and the approval of the plat, conditions 1 through 10, and these are all found on pages 10, 11, and 12 of the staff packet. Now, there is one minor correction here. If you turn to page 11 and you look at the map that was passed out that should be in front of you, the map with the red PUE there. So if we look at number 7, it reads, dedicated 26-foot north-south public use easement between West 34th and West 36, generally located along the west side of the subdivision. This, after further review upon this, the PUE, here's the condition and how it should read. Number 7 should read, dedicate a 26-foot north-south public use easement along the west side of Lot 2. The rest of that's covered with a 26-foot common access easement and that's for the parking internal to that Lot 3 and 4. There was a public comment, one in favor, and then there was another one here that had requested, I believe you have it in your supplemental packet. It's kind of an objection to the vacation of the alley. So, Miss Lorraine Russo, she will have access. This dedication of the PUE, as you see in the red, that will be her access from 35th Avenue to 36 out to Spenard. So we're not eliminating that. We're just moving it, and they're going to have to pay. It's actually going to be a big improvement because they're going to have to pave that now to a municipal standard of a 20-foot wide alley. So that addresses her comment. With that, I'll ask you guys. I'll answer any other questions you may have.
At this time, does the board have any questions for staff? Mark Seward.
Through the chair to the staff, could you repeat the wording that you want on B7? I didn't catch the last bit of it again.
Through the chair, yep, Mr. Seward. It's dedicate a 26-foot north-south public use easement along the west side of Lot 2.
Thank you.
There's a couple of other corrections that probably should be made. We have Part A, 2 Part A's, and then a Part B.
Through the chair, yeah,
So we should have a Part A, B, and then C, I
yeah,
believe.
A, B, and C, and then 1 through 10.
And it's 1 through 10 instead of 1 through 9, and then a 6 on the next page.
So when you read that back, you can, yes,
Okay.
you're correct.
And Don Porter.
Yes, through the chair. Can you explain why it's only a PUE to 34th and then an access easement between, to 35th and then from 35th to the 34th as common? One's PUE and one is common access. There's a difference.
Through the chair, Mr. Porter, the 26-foot wide public use easement is required because they're vacating a public alleyway. The 26-foot wide common access easement is intended to be private and will only be shared between the two lots. There was no intent to dedicate a public access to the two north lots that would ultimately access out onto 34th Avenue. The only requirement by the planning department was to dedicate the PUE that would not prohibit access via 34th or 35th Avenue to 36th Avenue. So that's the reason why we have one public 26-foot wide easement and then two 26-foot wide common access easements that are intended to be private. Thank you.
Excuse me, one follow-up. So only the PUE area will be upgraded to municipal standard, is that correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Porter, there are standards for construction of parking lots, but the 26-foot wide public use easement will be to municipal standards, correct? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the board have questions for staff at this time? May we now have petitioner's representative?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members, planning board, planning board members, and the planning staff. Today, we are here to represent, I am here to represent Cooking Land Housing Authority. My name is Tamás.
Can you start with your name?
I was just going to get there. My name is Tamás Deák. It's spelled Tamasdeak. And I'm a principal at KPB Architects representing Cooking Land Housing. With me is Tyler Robinson, who is the Development Finance Director of Cooking Land. And what we're going to do during our time here is we're going to take a very brief moment of intro, what we're going to do, which I'm doing right now. And then we're going to spend about 3 minutes on explaining in the big picture way what the Cooking Land Housing is trying to do, and Tyler will take that. After that, I'm going to address a couple of technical issues, and we'll like to reserve our time, whatever is remaining, for rebuttal.
Thank you, members of the board, staff. Tyler Robinson, Cook Inlet Housing. We've been for about 8 years now working on a number of development efforts in the area of 36th and Spenard. If you've been by there recently, you see a new mixed-use building, and have seen over the course of the last couple of years some remediation of a highly contaminated site across the street from that site. We've assembled a number of parcels. This particular plat has to do with an area that we're referring to as our Cook Inlet Housing Campus. It really houses 4 existing buildings. One of them is our headquarters building, our main staff office with about 90 employees, and it serves as our main leasing office in the Anchorage area. Behind that, we have what we call the annex building across the existing alley, and that serves as our construction shop. We also have a retail and office tenants in that building. North of our office building is the Church of Love building. It's been a church since the 50s, a number of congregations over the years, and we've been using it for a variety of community uses, sort of community center and cultural hub, and it's been really well received in the community. We hope to maintain it and improve it and keep it as a community asset for the years to come. Just north of that is 3400 Spenard, a 2-story office building. This building started its life as a 1-story building. You may remember it as the Spenard Auto Supply building. And then over the years, this building also housed the Spenard Post Office. So people have a lot of kind of fond memories of this part of the neighborhood. Our goals here are really to continue much in the same way as the uses are today, although we are looking for a residential component eventually at 3400 Spenard, but we really see it as a way to mix our office uses, our commercial uses, our community uses in the Church of Love, and potentially some new residential uses. The plat is mostly a cleanup. I think I heard 8 lots. I can't remember if it's 8 or 9, but basically getting rid of lot lines that run through buildings creates a financing issue most of the time, and putting each of those 4 buildings on 4 distinct lots. But in the process, what we're really doing is not thinking of them separately, rather than we're thinking of them together as one place. So this platting action allows us eventually to move forward and, as Mr. Odell suggested, look at it in a shared parking scenario, add additional landscaping, really be able to encourage circulation both by vehicle and people across those lots. And then also create some outdoor spaces for our employees, our future tenants, and then visitors or users of those sites. So that's our high level. I think the map also shows the other development activities that we have in the area, and I'll turn over to Tomasz for any technical stuff.
Thank you. We'll take the questions after. I just wanted to go through a few of the technical issues. First of all, thanking staff, both Sean and David, to work with us on this. It's been several months of coordination with not just the planning department, but also various other departments to make sure that what we're doing is actually reasonable. I think the staff comments reflect that we are actually achieving that. The few comments you have seen or heard about the vacation itself address the access issue. And as Mr. Porter pointed out, that public use easement is going to be the access. So this vacation is really a vacation and rededication. We're just not dedicating a 20-foot alley, but dedicating a 26-foot public use easement, which allows for aerial fire access vehicles to be able to pass through this parcel. Other than that, we are in concurrence with the staff recommendations, and we would like to move forward with the plat, and thank you.
Thank you. And you have 5 minutes, 43 seconds for rebuttal. Does the board have any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Please come forward, sir.
Excuse me, my name is Robert Irwin. I'm an attorney. I represent...
Can you speak into the mic so we can get a good record for you?
Yes. I represent Mrs. Russo, who owns the 4 lots on the north side of 35th and who built her house there in 1953. She is, of course, an elderly lady. She has 3 elderly sons there, and she rents other houses. And the main access now to the south and to the east is through the alleyway that's to be eliminated. She's extremely worried about access because if she cannot get out of 35th except to Minnesota, Minnesota is a one-way going north, and she would have getting in and out of her 4 lots is extremely difficult unless she has some way to get to Spenard Road in a roundabout way. And she's mainly worried about vehicles for medical, or if they have fire, how they get in and how they get out if she does not have access to the, and as I said, she's been there long before, well, in 1953, I think that's the year the international airport opened. So she's been there a long, long time, and she's almost 92 years old. And I'm not sure what I heard her tonight. I'm an attorney representing her. Is there going to be access for her? Because at the present time, if you shut off that, she's only left going to Minnesota Drive. And the only thing around her are parking lots and buildings. You can't turn around. You can't go anywhere. So on her behalf, she calls to her attention. She objects to it. She's filed an amended thing saying, what am I going to do for myself and my tenants if we don't have guaranteed access somehow to Spenard Road or to 36th? And that's her opposition at this point. It's not clear to me, was not clear in the notice she got, whether or not she would have any access at all except to Minnesota.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Irwin? Yes, we do. Dave Whitfield.
Through the chair, I'd like to address Mr. Irwin's comments with regard to the alleyway. The planning department is not supportive of eliminating access for Ms. Russo. In fact, that was one of the major discussions that we had with Cook Inlet when we talked about this project originally. The planning department was only supportive of the vacation when dedication of this public use easement, this 26 public use easement was put on the table. So the planning department is requiring that a 26-foot wide public use easement that Ms. Russo could use be dedicated with this plat. So there is no intent by the petitioner, nor is there intent by the planning department to support eliminating access for Ms. Russo. In fact, I would say that more than likely this 26-foot wide public use easement will probably improve the situation, the access situation that she currently has today. So I don't think that Cook Inlet intends to eliminate or prevent her from using that access, nor is it the intent of the planning department to allow that to happen.
If I understand you correctly, you're saying she will have access across the common parking lots of either to the north of her or to the south of her?
Through the chair, Mr. Irwin, she would have access via the 26-foot wide public use easement along proposed Lot 2, so it would be south to 36th Avenue. So essentially exactly the way she has it today.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public who wishes to speak tonight on this matter? Anyone at all? May we have the petitioner's representative for their rebuttal?
Thank you. I'd just like to echo Mr. Irwin's concern on behalf of Mrs. Russo. One of the reasons why we're moving essentially this access is, as currently shown, the alley runs nearly adjacent to the west side of the building that we have off of the alley. When we have garage doors and man doors, if you will, entering those spaces. And so we've had, frankly, it's a safety issue for our staff as well as people driving through that area. What we're trying to do is shift the entire easement, if you will, to the west so that it's not directly adjacent to the building, so you have a more natural turning radius and you'll not be at risk of our guys literally open the door and look outside and see if there's a car coming. So again, that was really part of the driving, the driver of that. We are at risk somewhat to us providing the common access easement eventually to be constructed through the lots. Sometimes one of these things that might create some cut-through traffic and things like that, it's something that we'll just have to manage through ongoing design and maintenance. But again, just to echo that concern, we do think it's going to be an improvement, both because of the way it'll be constructed, but also in its location. So with that, we appreciate your time here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that raise any questions from the board? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll now close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. May I have a motion to approve the variance request? Don Porter moves, and Kevin Cross seconds. Mr. Porter, would you like to state your motion?
Yes, in the case of S12371, I move that we approve the department recommendations, the request for a variance, item A, and suitable to recording a suitable plat within 24 months of the preliminary approval of any approved time extensions.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I intend to support this motion. I have reviewed all of the items, and we have also heard public testimony that the 20-foot easement, which now is a public use easement at 26 feet, is going to be satisfactory in terms of use. They have also mimicked the needs of the different lots. They've taken away lot lines through buildings, and they have satisfied all of the different department recommendations. So it's clear to me that they have satisfied the needs for this plat.
Thank you. Are there any other findings that the board would like to offer on that issue? With respect to the variance request, I'd like to also offer the evidence that the subdivision was created back in 1940 with only a 30-foot dedication of 35th Avenue at that time, and there are buildings in the space that prohibits dedication of the southern half of the West 35th. And that dedication of the 5 feet right-of-way would allow for applicable B3 zoning setback of 5 feet. Therefore, special condition, variance condition 1 exists. I think that's the request. This is the variance request. The vacation request is the one that goes in number 2. Are there any other comments that the board wishes to make? And is there any opposition to the variance request? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. And we have a motion to approve the request for vacation of the 20-foot wide right-of-way. Don Porter moves and Kevin Cross seconds. Don, would you like to state your motion?
Yes, I move that in this case, S21371, that we approve the recommendations for the request for vacation of a 20-foot wide right-of-way between West 35th and 36th Avenue, subject to recording of the suitable plat within 24 months of approval and any approved time extensions.
Thank you. And would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, as we've discussed before, they've presented adequate information to us that it meets the standard for vacation of right-of-way, and they're replacing it in kind and more so actually to clean up the entire block. So I think this is a value to the public.
Thank you. Are there any other findings that the board would like to offer? Kevin Cross.
Yes, I also look to support this motion. Do we need to make an adjustment to B7? Should we?
Not yet. We're going to do that on the third motion.
Regarding approval of the request for a variance of the 20-foot right-of-way between West 35th Avenue and 36th Avenue, subject to recording a suitable plat within 24 months of approval. Again, the intention of the petitioner is to improve the area, improve access. We've actually increased from a 20-foot established to a 26-foot paved public easement, public utility easement, public utility dedicated right-of-way, which is a dramatic improvement to access, which was the main concern in the public statements, was that this development would encroach or cause traffic difficulties. Seeing that that's resolved, I seek to approve it.
Thank you. Are there any other findings that the board would like to offer? I also found it compelling that this improvement is going to reduce risk of harm at the building where the present alleyway basically abuts the building, and that it's going to improve sight distances for people approaching that intersection, and that it actually, like you said, it is increasing the amount of space available for access on those lots. But is there any opposition to the motion on the floor? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the plat, subject to conditions? Don Porter moves. Kevin Cross seconds. Don, would you like to state your motion?
Yes, in this case, S12371, I move that we approve the plat for 24 months, subject to items 1 through 6 of the staff packet, with changing item 7 to be dedicate a 26-foot north-south public use easement along the west side of Lot 2. And then item 8, 9, 9A, 9B, 9C, and item 10, which would be make the following drafting changes in the platted area, items Roman numeral 1 and 2.
Thank you. And are there any findings that the board would like to offer on this motion?
I would like to offer that I have read through even the several of the items, including traffic, which noted that they only wanted a single access to each lot. So staff has done a very good job of working through all of the different departments and the needs of the owners as well. And this appears to be a good balance between what the needs of the public and the needs of the owners that are doing the development.
Thank you. Are there any other findings?
Yes, I also seek to approve the plat for 24 months, subject to the following conditions, as noted by Mr. Porter. I also want to note that typically what we hear in public testimony is, in the concern of the public is access, often surrounding utilities as well as drainage. And I'd like to point out that it's subject to B2. They will resolve service connection issues with Anchorage water and wastewater utility, and all unused and unnecessary water and sanitary sewer services will be disconnected, and with new design and construction practices manual, which means that the area drainage will be significantly improved through this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there, Mark Seward?
Through the chair, on case S12371, I too intend to support the motion. Municipal traffic and fire prevention, no comments or concerns, and being familiar with the area and site review, it is going to improve that blind corner and emergency access greatly than from what it is now. Currently, I doubt that a fire truck could make that corner around that north end of that building. Excuse me. With it being moved to the east, it's going to eliminate and increase the access to that annex building on Lot 1, which is definitely a hazard with the doors accessing that. And I think the staff and the petitioner did a very good job on this, so I just wanted to commend you for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion on the floor? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. We will now take up case S12372, Denali Estates subdivision. And we have petitioner's representative.
I think you want the staff's presentation first.
Oh, that would be good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get into the presentation, I would first like to say that the staff planner that was assigned to this case and wrote the case is actually out sick today. So please forgive me if I don't have all the details of this case. I may defer to the petitioner or petitioner's representative in some instances, but this is a request to subdivide one tract of land into 18 lots and 2 tracts as a conservation subdivision under Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, Chapter 8, Section 070B. Petitioner is requesting approval of a 60-month phasing plan consisting of 2 phases. The phasing plan will allow the developer more time to construct the public infrastructure as development progresses eastward onto McIntyre Road. Tract A, as outlined on the plat, will be reserved for future development, while Tract B will become an open space tract. The property is zoned R10 SL under Assembly Ordinance 9912 and has special limitations requiring a minimum of 0.75 dwelling units per acre. This is a maximum of 0.75 dwelling units per acre. This particular subdivision has a residential density of 0.44 DUA, dwelling units per acre, excluding Tract A. If Tract A were included, then the residential density would be even lower. The plat shows a 30-foot wide trail easement from McIntyre Road across Tract A and B to the Eagle River Greenbelt. The subdivider will be required to build a 10-foot wide gravel pathway with signage identifying the pathway within the trail easement. And this trail connection is important for the neighborhood to access Eagle River Greenbelt. The Private Development Division is requesting that McIntyre Road be constructed to municipal standards and that Black Pine Circle be constructed to provide a suitable turnaround within its right-of-way. There are Class B wetlands and streams within this subdivision, and there are 2 notes pertaining to both the streams and wetlands that are being recommended for approval tonight. As I mentioned, this particular plat was reviewed under the Conservation Subdivision Standards of Title 21, Chapter 8. Staff has reviewed and found that all standards are substantially met. Those standards are found on pages 6, 7, and 8 of your staff packet. Staff is recommending approval of the phasing plan, approval of the plat for 60 months, with a couple of minor changes to conditions number B2 and B10D. And I'll go through B2 first. I've laid on the table in front of you some recommended language, and I'll read it to you right now. Condition B2 should state, within the Black Pine Circle right-of-way, resolve with planning and private development to construct to municipal standards an asphalt surface turnaround, period. Condition B10D, which is a plat note. It was made known to me right before this meeting that Eklutna Inc., the owner of the property and petitioner tonight, is requesting that they own the Tract B, which is the open space tract, and that they're going to manage it. So that plat note should be modified to state, and I'll go ahead and quote this: Tract B is owned by Eklutna Inc., period. Tract B shall remain undisturbed and naturally vegetated to protect the existing drainage ways from development, encroachment, or clearing, with the exception of the following: installation and maintenance of approved drainage, related improvements such as culverts, infiltration galleries, energy dissipation features, and installation of required utilities, period, end quote. We'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions at this time? Kevin Cross.
Thank you, Dave. Real quick, your B10, D, Tract B is owned by, could you restate that first 2 sentences?
Yeah, and through the chair, Mr. Cross, if I could just further explain. In traditional subdivisions, if you are dedicating an open space tract, typically it's to be conveyed, the ownership is conveyed to the association, and the association actually owns it and maintains it. In this particular case, under the conservation subdivision, it's the desire of Eklutna to actually own and manage and maintain this open space tract. So the plat note should read, Tract B is owned by Eklutna Inc., period. Tract B, rather than Tract A,
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure.
shall remain undisturbed, and then the remainder of the plat note.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? With that, can we have the petitioner's representative?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, planning staff, professionals. My name is Tom Dreyer, spelled like the ice cream, D-R-E-Y-E-R, and I'm with the S4 Group, and I represent the petitioners, Eklutna Inc. tonight. With me to answer your questions are Mr. Grant Matthews, Mr. Dave Grenier, and Brandon Marco of Triad Engineering for any questions you may have, and Mr. Steve Eng with Northram Engineering. And also with me tonight from Eklutna is Mr. Nick Francis, Steve Connolly, and Mac McDonald. We concur with the department recommendations and the amendments presented tonight. I would just like to add one minor one, and that's on condition number 7 on packet page 9, the very last sentence. It says the final ownership of tract B must be conveyed to the HOA. That would need to be changed, then be conveyed to Eklutna Inc. to match the change on 10B, or 10D, excuse me. This is the first new conservation subdivision as per the new Title 21 code. So it's presented a lot of challenges to the planning department and us as the petitioners in the design and trying to interpret the code. We comply with the purpose of the conservation subdivision that's shown on your page, or that's shown on page 8-33 of the code. We have support for this conservation subdivision from every single department that submitted comments. McIntyre Road will be built to DCM standards, which is actually above and beyond fire code standards. Traffic comments are on page 153 of the packet, and they are concurring with the design of this subdivision. The roads will be maintained by Subursa. The soils report by Northram Engineering is on your page 132. And the actual summary sheet was left out of the packet, and I have copies here if anyone would like to see that. We've taken care of the water issue. Terrasat reports begin on page 61, and its conclusions are on page 75. Travis Peterson, Environmental Consulting, did a complete wetland determination, boundary determination, and they are shown on the submitted preliminary plat. They're hatched in green inside of the tract B. The zoning, which is on your page 168, is R10SL as per AO 99-12. The only special limitation is that the density shall not exceed 0.75 DUA. And as staff already mentioned, the density of Denali Estates is 0.44, little more than half of required. The CER comp plan shows this area as residential and up to 1 dwelling unit per acre. And with that, I'll save my time for rebuttal.
You have 6 minutes and 28 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions? At this time, we'll go ahead and take public comment.
Thank you.
Is there any members of the public who wish to speak on this matter tonight? Please come forward, sir.
Hi, thanks. My name is Tom Hull, and I own property just above where this construction would take place. And my concern about this is the water table. I know that currently, we have about 2.5 gallons per minute at our residence. But right next door to us, our neighbor, they have to bring in water, and there's many others that have the same issue. This is the first that I've heard of what was going on just in this notice that we received here. So I'm interested in learning a little bit more about the impacts as far as the water goes, and any environmental studies that were done, and where I would be able to obtain that.
Okay. And your last name was Holmes?
Oh, Hull.
Hull, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you know where he would be able to get a copy of the staff packet? Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak?
Thank you.
Please come forward.
Hi, thanks. My name's Chris Sewell. I'm a homeowner on Denina Drive, which is the main access for this proposed subdivision. Essentially, my main concern is similar to the concern previously stated. It's in regards to information and access to the information. I personally did not receive any notice for this meeting, nor did I receive any notice for the community meeting, which was held a couple months back. I did attend the community meeting. I was notified by a neighbor a couple days before. We expressed some concerns at that point regarding the list of people in our neighborhood that weren't notified of the meeting itself, because it's not just myself. Again, I was notified yesterday of this meeting by a neighbor just in passing. And so I had a limited, let's call it an hour before this meeting to try to, somebody sent me a picture of the notice which he had in his hand. So I was able to, just while we were sitting here, get on and go through some of the documentation that was provided as preparation. Again, it's my concerns around not, being a stakeholder, being on the road that provides access to this. We had raised some concerns with at the community meeting, both myself and some of our other neighbors. I do see that those were noted, and there was a response. Again, this is the first time I'm reading it. But as a stakeholder kind of in the area, I know this was submitted, at least by title, as a plat with variances. I'm not personally clear what the variances are, if any. And so again, it's just representing myself and again, some of my neighbors who weren't able to be here tonight as a, uninformed party that would like to have an opportunity to, have appropriate heads up on this, have appropriate review time, and be able to comment thoroughly.
Okay. And does the staff have any questions? For
Through the chair, Mr. Sewell, can I just address his comments? Is it Mr. Sewell?
Yes.
With regard to notification, municipal code requires the planning department to notify all property owners and residents within 500 feet of the petition boundary of the subdivision. So I suspect that potentially you may be just on the outside of that 500 feet, and that could be why you weren't notified. My apologies for that. I'm glad to see you're here, however, testifying. And then your second concern was with regard to the variances. This is a subdivision that isn't proposing any variances or not requesting any variances. It's an alternative subdivision design under a conservation subdivision, which is a rather unique subdivision type. This is the first of its kind in Anchorage. But they're not proposing any variances, so that's why you're not seeing any additional information on variances, because they're not seeking any. So.
Okay. Do I have any time left for one more question?
Do we have a question for him?
I would like to know what your next question is.
Well, the only question I have is, again, this is all new information to me at the time, right? So being generally unfamiliar with what a conservation subdivision is, I understand, I've been a homeowner in the neighborhood for 4 years now. I understand that there was something put forth for review in 2006, which was denied. Again, this is not firsthand knowledge. This is just information being shared with me by neighbors. So at this point, I'm unclear what the differences are between what was put forth originally. Again, we're like the first development of this Denali Estates that was developed by Eklutna, and we had some specific questions around some of these things during the community meeting. And again, it's just history that I'm not familiar with. And so I'm unclear, just as again, I'm maybe outside of the 500 feet, but I'm on the only access to this neighborhood. One of the concerns that other neighbors had raised previously was with regards to access and traffic, increased traffic, and potential impacts on property values for our existing neighborhood. We also had some specific questions around homeowners association, which currently is inactive in our neighborhood. Would this be a separate homeowners association for the new development? Would it be joint? Again, these were questions that were noted during the community meeting, not necessarily answered, and again, not having a chance to review any of the responses ahead of this. I'm relatively uninformed standing up here asking questions, but I'm just doing what I can to try to understand the situation, because I will be affected by the results.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions for Mr. Sewell? Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak tonight? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Marcy Robertson. I have lived in this neighborhood for almost 15 years. My concern is, like everyone else's that has voiced tonight, the water table is a big concern. We're all on wells. If the last meeting that we had there in Eagle River, there was some folks that live above the estate there that now have to haul in water because the water table has been affected by the homes that were put in below. So this is a big concern. I really don't want to be hauling water all winter long in this area. Traffic is a huge concern for us. We live on a dead-end street. There's several houses in there now with families, and you look at 19 possible more homes with at least 2 to 3 more vehicles up and down the road every day. So that was another one of my big concerns, was just traffic. We've enjoyed our little area back there, but we have a lot of families with small children, pets, and there's a lot of walkers in that area. We walk on the road. There's not a sidewalk. There's not an easement there. So, those were the main concerns. Just day before yesterday, we had a fire on Eagle River Road. The road was shut down. There was no way for people to get out of the valley. And so that's another concern. You have more people, you're building more homes, there's more potential for fire and emergencies, and there's only one way in and one way out. So I'd like, for you to consider those type of things when we look at these new developments on a dead-end 14-mile road out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Marcy Robertson? And is that spelled R-O-B-E-R-T-S-O-N or E-N?
O-N.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this matter tonight? Okay. Then may we have the petitioner's representative for their rebuttal?
Yes, thank you. Triad's going to respond to the water table issue, and you may also, you have the packet. The water report is on. It starts on page 61, and the conclusion and summaries are on page 73 and 74. In answer to the HOA, this will be a separate HOA for this development, completely separate from the first phase. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brandon Marcotte. He'll answer any questions about the water table issue. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Marcotte. That's M-A-R-C-O-T-T. I'm with Triad Engineering. Tom generally answered where I was going to head with this. If Mr. Hull would refer to Terrasat's report inside the packet. It begins on page 61, and again, to clarify, I'm with Triad Engineering. I spoke with Mr. Young this afternoon, and I'm speaking for him briefly tonight, as he can't be here, and if he would, he'd be recused anyway. From what I understand from his report, it states quite clearly in multiple locations that there's very, very abundant water available for this development. The report found that there was 5 aquifers in the area. 2 of those aquifers are used most frequently by not only the Denina subdivision, but the subdivision on the north side of Eagle River Road. This subdivision, the proposed subdivision, would be using the lower aquifer, which again has, it's a confined aquifer that's actually under pressure, and it has a very, very abundant supply of water. Let's see, page 71. Top of page 71. The evaluation of the lower aquifer essentially means that the Denali subdivision will have an insignificant impact on the surrounding community, likely not even measurable. And again on 72, importantly, the unconsolidated lower elevation aquifer has a very high recharge rate as well. This recharge is estimated to be in a matter of minutes. So in summary, I think the report is very clear that there's an abundant water available from the testing that's been done, from the analysis that's been done. Water is not an issue with this development. As far as traffic goes, I'd like to speak to that briefly. Title 21 for developments of this size generally has 2 classifications of residential streets. They have a minor classification and a major classification. The minor classification is for streets with, say, 0 to 500 average daily trips. When you get into the major classification, you get from 500 to, say, 2,000. Once you get over 2,000, you get into higher standards like collector standards. If you look again in the packet, page 31, if you would, please. Triad did an analysis, a brief analysis on the ADT trips from this development, including the trips from Denina and the 5 or so lots above this development. What we determined was that this development contributes 190 average daily trips to the existing development of 238. So you have an existing traffic loading of 238, which is a minor residential road classification. You're adding 190 average daily trips. Your total trip value is still 485. So this development itself is not changing the road classification of any of the roads within either this development or the Denina development. They're all staying as a residential minor classification. As Tom mentioned, all roads will be built to DCM standards. This would involve grades at either 10% or less. In fact, these grades within this development should be 9% or less. 24-foot wide strip paved roads, as Tom said, will be built over and above fire code standards. With that, I'd answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Don Porter.
Yes, through the chair. I would like you to address how large of a subdivision would it have to be before it goes to some other, more than one single access that right now is off of Denina Road? I mean, right now you're adding lots to the subdivision, and at some point in time, the subdivision would have to get so big that it has to have multiple accesses. But are you even anywhere near that requirement per municipal code?
No. We're quite a ways below that. And the situation is really prevalent up Eagle River Valley in so many places. The closest water main is miles away. It's a problem on the hillside. It's a problem that that people have when they buy houses away from areas that are more connected and with sewer and water mains and things like that. I think one thing that's important to keep in mind is that without utilizing the conservation subdivision code, the number of lots permitted by the underlying zoning would be 33 lots within this area. And we're at 18 lots, so we're almost half of what it could be developed as, in that we're providing over 30% open space in Track B, which is 1 million, it's 536,000 square feet, about 13 and a half acres that's being provided. And we're also providing a trail connection to the Eagle River Greenbelt for the neighbors. And I'd also like to add that if any of the neighbors here behind me want to look closer at the maps or whatnot, they should feel free to call me, and we can go over the plans and the maps and the designs and whatnot, and how we ended up coming up with what we have designed now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions from the board? Jana Wilson.
Hi, through the chair. On page 69 of our packet, Terra State made a recommendation, and maybe it's a staff question, but to place a note on the plat that goes through some safety precautions when drilling wells in this area because of the pressure of the water table. And I was wondering, I didn't see it anywhere else other than right here, but maybe I missed it. But did you guys take a look at that? And
through the chair, Ms. Wilson, yes, we actually talked about that this afternoon. We spoke specifically with Mr. Young about that note, and as he does sit on the board, he himself said that it's a rather unusual request on his part. He has not seen that type of request or that type of note in the 7 years that he's been on the board, but he did feel compelled to at least put that in his findings. As far as on the plat itself, quite frankly, we were struggling a little bit with how to put something like this on a plat, if at all it should be on the plat. One thought that we had was maybe adding a note that said that well installation would follow the recommendations found within the TerraSat report, or something simple like that could be incorporated in the plat.
yeah, I'm not sure how to incorporate it either, but yeah, well, at least you guys have been thinking about it and keep it on your radar.
Are there any other questions from the board? Does staff have any idea of what kind of note, if any, should be used to warn people of the artesian pressure of the well that they're in?
Through the chair, Ms. Weltstein, can you point me to that recommended plat note again, because I'm having a hard time finding it here.
Sure, it's page 69, and it's the last paragraph, and then it goes items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and it follows over to page 70.
Through the chair, Ms. Weltstein, your recommended plat note is actually on looks like on page 70, correct?
Well, I'm not recommending it. I just noticed that it was.
Well, no, that's TerraSat's recommendation.
Correct.
It's on page 70. I'm just verifying that I'm understanding you correctly.
It actually starts on 69 and carries all the way through.
The conversation runs from 69 to 70, correct? But the language with regard to the the Platting Board condition is on page 70. It would be my recommendation to make this a resolve comment. Rather than trying to draft language as a plat note off the top of my head, I would prefer to have the ability to think about what an appropriate plat note is. I don't think it's a bad recommendation. In fact, I think it's probably a good one. But for me to recommend language right now, I think that would be inappropriate. So if I could recommend that the board make a condition added to the staff recommendations that requires the petitioner to resolve with the planning department the need for a plat note that addresses the aquifer, I think that would suffice. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Porter.
Yes, through the chair, I'd like to offer some additional commentary that essentially the concern is that it's an artesian well and it's under pressure. And so if a well was developed within this artesian and was not correctly sealed with the correct valving, that it could continue to flow outside of somebody actually pumping water out of it. So, that's a best practice for someone that's drilling to understand that if they have an artesian well. Now, it may not be, what's in the report is that it may not be apparent all the time that it's artesian. And so if somebody wasn't paying attention, they might install a well and then come later and find out that it would be flowing. Mm. So some of this is best practice. And so we could just maybe leave it to resolve concerns about artesian wells as part of the development process or something. Yes. It's the artesian.
Kevin Cross.
Would this not be handled under section B6, where prior to final plat approval, submit a private development for review and approval of comprehensive site grading and drainage plan meeting requirement for project management, engineering department operating policy and procedures? Would that be resolved under number 6?
Through the chair, Mr. Cross, no, that condition does not address this artesian well issue. Okay. I would suggest that an additional condition be required.
Thank you. And are there any other questions? Thank you. Becky Lipson.
Through the chair, this is a question for staff. So my understanding is that this is the first conservation subdivision. With regard to the language that was modified in section 7 and 10D about ownership remaining with Eklutna, and I'm less familiar with these provisions. Have people contemplated having a conservation easement versus language as to who the final owner of the property would be?
Through the chair, Ms. Lipson, I'm not sure I'm understanding exactly your question. Conservation easement versus ownership of a conservation tract, is that? If you can explain just a little bit more, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to figure this out in my mind too, but it just strikes me as there's danger in that language should reflect that it's continuing to be a conservation easement, which is what 10D does.
Yeah, and I can tell you that, as I said before, in traditional subdivisions, if there is an open space or a conservation tract that's being dedicated, typically the planning department requires the establishment of a homeowners association, and that tract be conveyed to the association for ownership and maintenance. However, with conservation subdivisions, it allows for the tract to be either owned by an association or by an organization of their choosing. It's been made it's been told to me prior to this meeting that Eklutna intends to own and operate, or I should say own and maintain, the conservation tract. And so because the code allows for it, I'm inclined to agree to that. However, I think condition, or I should say plat note 10D does cover the fact that tract B will be a tract that will be undisturbed and naturally vegetated, so it will be conserved and it will not be developed. So I think we're covered there.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thanks. Thank you.
All right. And the score is still 5-1, by the way.
And the matter now rests with the board. The public hearing portion is now closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a motion to approve the phasing plan? Don Porter moves.
Yes, in the matter of case S12372, I move that we approve the phasing plan of this case.
Thank you. And do I have a second on the motion? Kevin Cross seconds the motion. Would you like to speak to your motion, Don Porter?
Yes, I intend to approve this motion. This gives adequate time for the owner to move forward and with development rather than hamstringing them by such a short time for a large subdivision.
Thank you. Are there any other findings that the board would like to offer? Kevin Cross. Mike?
Thank you. I also seek to approve the phasing plan, if it was motion. Doing it in phases will also allow for more comment, more public interaction with the HOA and with the individuals. So rather than doing it all in one giant movement, small bite-sized pieces for a larger development allow for more public interaction.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion on the floor to approve the phasing plan? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. We'll now move to approve the plat for 60 months, subject to conditions. May I have a motion to do so? Don Porter, would you like to state your motion?
Yes, in the case of S12372, I move that we approve the plat for 60 months following of the conditions in the platting packet. Item 1, resolve utility easements. Item 2, Dave, tell me if I get this right. Within the Black Pine Circle right-of-way, resolve with planning and private development to construct to municipal standards and asphalt surface turnaround. Item 3, within McIntyre Road, and then items 4, 5, 6, 7. Item 7, we also need to change the wording to be conveyed to Eklutna Inc. And item 8, resolve with planning, and then item 10 and item 9 and item 10, items 10A, B, C, and D, with D being tract B is owned by Eklutna Corporation. And then I would like to add also item 11, resolve with planning a plat note to resolve drilling within the aquifer for artesian concerns.
Thank you. And Kevin Cross seconds the motion. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I intend to support this motion. We've gone through a number of discussions. We've had some public testimony, certainly about the water, and the report clearly states that the aquifers that are going to be accessed by the new wells being drilled will be below the other wells that appear already in the subdivision, as well as adequate recharge. The subdivision is small enough, and the lengths are, on the road are adequate for turnarounds, for emergency access, and there's been a number of other concerns put through department comment. They've had adequate time to comment, and they have responded to the departmental comments.
Thank you. Are there any other findings that Kevin Cross?
I also seek to support this motion. According to public testimony, we had a couple concerns. First was road access. According to provisions, it does require that within the McIntyre Road right-of-way, construct municipal standards, a 20-foot wide strip paved gravel street, as well as prior to final plat, petitioner shall enter into subdivision agreement for private development, including paved streets. So the petitioner is being required to work with the local HOAs to make sure that there's not road difficulties. Also, in the Terrasat report on page 94, he makes mention of recommendation during development, as well as making sure they restrict heavy equipment to specific times of year as not to do damage to the roads. So as far as condition of the roads and access, that has been addressed in staff packet. The other access, some other things that we typically see, trail easement. Typically from the public, their concern is accessing trails and restriction, how trail easements shall be established. And final, what we heard had to do with water. And it appears that the geophysical and the well report done by Terrasat Environmental addresses these. There are multiple aquifers. If there's well failures in the area, my guess is just due to bedrock that there's going to be areas that, just due to earthquakes and shifting of areas that may ebb and flow with water supply. But there's actually 94 high-producing wells in the immediate vicinity around this property that produce far above average, according to his report, which gives the indication that there's actually adequate water in the area. So based on that information, I seek to support the staff's packet and support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Porter.
Yes, I would also like to add one further item. This was done under conservation subdivision, which are new rules, which is always fun to be the first one. But what I can tell you is that they are dedicating open space, which is wetlands now, keeping them out of the development zone, and that is commendable in the sense that it keeps wetlands undeveloped, which is a goal of the agencies, both municipal and state and federal. And so they're following the rules set out for that purpose.
Thank you. Are there any other findings? Is there any opposition to approving the motion on the floor? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. Are there any other persons wishing to be heard tonight? Any board member comments? Then in that case, we will stand in adjournment. It is 7:53. There you go.